The other world. There is, in the common world, the world we see, unemployment, debt, poverty, inflation, pollution, waste, taxation, homelessness, war, and crime. These are the 10 great evils. The 10 great evils flow from the state and the law. All law is derived from the law of nature, alternatively called the law of the jungle. If it were to be put into words, it would be known as the dual doctrine of power, which states that might makes right and the end justifies the means. This is the reality we all know and are familiar with. This reality gives rise to the problems we are familiar with. This reality we are familiar with is the natural world. The laws of nature govern it. It has only one lever, and this is natural law. In physics, they call the operation of law, force. In history they call the workings out of the law, war. In politics it is known as power, but in nature itself, the working out of the law is often referred to as predation. The strong eat the weak, explicitly and metaphorically. This is the world we are in. It is the world of the strong. But because we take this world as a given, we rarely consider why this is so. Because we think this world is natural, we do not believe there is an alternative to this system. But it is wise to consider if there is another reality, besides this one we are born into. If we ask this honestly, of ourselves, we realize it is as if the answer has been there, since birth. There must be more than this. Even as we are born, we rail against the pain of this world. What do we learn as we are born? We learn that life is a struggle. That life is risky. That life comes with only the certainty of death, and everything else is unknown. But we struggle against this because we know somewhere there is a better world. Why struggle against the only possible outcome? Why work so hard, if we must inevitably fail? If this world is all there is and there is no other, this world is perfect, and no better can come, regardless of how hard we might work or fiercely we might fight. And so, our life experience teaches us two things. This world is all there is no other. But there is something else we learn. We realize we must fight constantly, without weariness or giving up, to gain a better world. This is the ultimate in mixed messaging. One side or the other of this equation is wrong. It is not difficult to figure out which it is. We would not be struggling to better this world, if there was no better reality to struggle towards. What exists would be all there is and could be, if there was no better to be had. We know a dish with too little salt can be made better just by adding a pinch more salt. But if we make a single dish of food better, is the world not made that much better, also? Which brings us to the realization that everything we know is flawed. Everything we know could be made better. We have knowledge of a better reality. Where does this knowledge come from? Not from this flawed world where nothing is perfect. There has to be another world. We have this world where everything is flawed and imperfect. It is so flawed. Good and evil are relative concepts in this world. There is no God in this world. This world is full of solid things. It is all natura and it is grounded in law. No one even tries to be perfect in this world. The best we can do is to follow the law. But the law is imperfect and does not even try to be perfect. The law only tries to be something everyone can follow. But what is the law, where does it come from and why does it exist? Obviously, the state makes the law, and it exists because the state wants to maintain order. But that is the superficial explanation. If in our hearts, we are trying to be perfect beings in a perfect world, where does the regulatory state fit in? The law is the manifestation of natural law configured for the use of man. The natural law states that might makes right and the end justifies the means. The law takes this simple and generalized law and parses it into specialized segments for controlling specific situations. The speed laws are merely another way of saying the end justifies the means, and the legal system that supports and enforces the law implements the rule that might makes right. There is no justification for the law or its enforcement other than the might wielded by the state. However, this is just an observation, not an explanation. We have remarked that the natural world is founded in the law of nature. Most people leave it at that. Because if natural law is justified, there is nothing more to say. But what if natural law exists because the true world or true reality has been buried under its lies? What right has the state to make laws for us? It might be said that the subject votes in the state with the expectation the state will formulate laws. But does the citizen have an alternative? Does the subject have the right to abrogate his responsibility, to choose right from wrong, without the state dictating to us how to live? The state manifests the natural law. The entire legitimacy of the state resides in its monopoly on power. The state rules the nation because the state has the power to rule the nation. But no one really thinks that power gives rights. It may do in an actual sense, but there is no moral justification attached to power. But this position is of course trumped by the fact that those with power are justified by the actuality of their power. Power, in short, justifies itself. But if we know this is not the ideal, if we know this does not represent perfection, then we know there is an alternative to this. If we know this better way does not fit in with the natural world, we know the better way is part of a better reality. The utilization of power to create law is not consistent with or compatible with its opposite. This starts a whole new ball game because we have, all too often, thought perfection comes in incremental steps. But how do we get to the opposite of a present condition, in incremental steps? Can the law eliminate the law? Can a system based on power disparities reform itself to eliminate power disparities? How would power eliminate power, when power loves a vacuum? As one group is reduced in power, another group increases in power. So, we see a pattern. There is a natural reality that contains within itself what are false dichotomies. There is a struggle for power between two groups, but neither represents perfection. The political left is no more moral than the political right. The issues differ, but the issues are not eliminated. It is always a struggle for power, in the natural world, and the side that gains the power creates the law. As we have pointed out, there is no moral justification for this, nor analytical explanation. Might makes right is its own justifier. But yet we still need to dig deeper to understand how nature, or the natural world, came into being. This will seem a bizarre project in the mind of a naturalist. In their thinking, nature had to come first and be the natural state of things. But logically, nature or the natural world has to be a reality derived from something earlier and better. This earlier and better is the Golden Age. The desire for the Golden Age is a desire for the perfected reality. The Golden Age is commensurate with Eden. Yet, it was lost. It was lost because in the eyes of man, might makes right and the end justifies the means, and the only way to counter this and defeat this, is with overwhelming force. But we cannot defeat evil with evil, and so there must be a different way to change things than provided by natural law and indeed, nature. But if there is, it must be part of a different universe, because in the natural world, all we have is the law of the jungle to work with. The natural world has locked itself into a logical conundrum. It relies on power to justify its actions, it cannot seek any other solution that is not justified by the law of the jungle, which is a paradox. We know the law of the jungle is primitive and unjustifiable, but there is no way to alter things without having the most power and in control of the regulatory machinery of the state. But we still have not analyzed why the natural law system exists. We have said, the natural law system could not have been the original one. Natural law is only possible if there is a more passive system to usurp. No one has looked for this prior reality, and so no one has ever found it. But there is one and there has to be one, and if we look logically at the natural world, we shall see why this is so. We only need to look at the story of Eden, to bring clarity to the situation. God created Eden. No one disputes this. Adam was there to take care of it. But once created, Eden was something which could be fought over. Without Eden, there is no nature because nature was developed out of Eden. We started with a perfect system that Adam corrupted because he wanted what he could only get by resorting to the justification of might. Eve saw that the fruit was pleasing to the eye, and his desire and her ability to take what she desired served as her justification. The knowledge of good and evil necessitated the law of the jungle, for mankind can only mediate disputes or disagreements by resorting to greater force. The fruit represents the law. But the point is, Eden as a perfect system existed prior to the natural order of things and remains a genetic memory. Not as a physical memory but as a logical and moral necessity. For the evil of nature necessitates a perfect system so that the evil of the natural order of things can be seen, and therefore, we are without excuse. But Eden is closed to us. But the system of Eden remains as a truth written in our hearts. We know good from evil because we know the Edenic system from the Babylonian one. We know the difference between coercion and usurpation and community. But our understanding is still not complete enough. We understand the natural world is oppressive and relies on force of arms. But how does this conflict with Eden? Adam ate of the fruit of the tree of good and evil. He took what did not belong to him. The ability to steal is not the sin is in the usurpation of the authority of God over his creation. It is equivalent to sitting in the seat of the Most High. We see this pattern play out over and over again in all sin and evil. Man takes what does not belong to him. We use power to steal, but it is the stealing, the parasitic taking of what does not belong to you that defines an act as evil, not the utilization of force. Taking what does not belong to us is wrong, whether force is used or not. We all know that, but this is the reality we are forced to live in. We fight or die. Those are the options we have been given. Our life is akin to the life of a gladiator. We fight in the arena, and we are good at it. We are ruthless, we kill without mercy anyone who opposes us, but we know there is a better life. We see it in the lives of those who come to cheer on our ruthless slaughter of others, who come perhaps to revel in our death at the hands of one of our opponents. Would they even show mercy in my defeat, or would they want to see me dead? We fight and we kill, but not for them, we do it for that better life we yearn for. But where is that better life? It does not take a lot of thought to realize this life of evil is a direction finder. Nature points to nurture. To get to better we only need to turn from what is worse. The more we understand where evil takes us, the more focused we are when we turn around and face in the opposite direction. That is all the two realities are, two distinct and opposite directions. These two paths take us into two very distinct realities. We cannot get to the other reality unless we turn precisely in the right direction. To do this we have to dig down and get aligned with the very essence of evil. We have said that perfection existed before imperfection and that power does not operate in a vacuum. Power dynamics cannot exist without property and people. One cannot dominate others unless there is property, and unless there are people, the property does not mean a thing. So, logically property existed prior to those who decided to use power to extract property from others and concentrate ownership in their own hands. This is all that evil is, it is taking what does not belong to you. All evil comes down to parasites acting in a parasitic manner. The state is nothing but the lord of the parasites, and the law is nothing more than the means by which parasitism is controlled. To find perfection requires nothing more than Christians who turn their back on all parasitic actions. Christians must never take what they did not create. That is the golden rule. If we obeyed the golden rule, there would be no need for the state, and the 10 great evils of unemployment, debt, poverty, inflation, pollution, waste, taxation, homelessness, war, and crime would vanish. Mankind cannot create reality or the core precepts of life. Man cannot create information, he can only revise it. All truth belongs to God, but mankind can add value to the truths of God. We can add value to the assets of this world. The natural world is perfect for nature but not for the spiritually mature. There is little in nature that is suitable for the use of man. We have to process and modify everything to make it more suitable for our use. But many cultures just want to use what God has given us with as little trouble as possible. They never create civilization. Civilization is the value added by man to the things of God. Tyranny or evil are those acts that consume this value without compensation. So, it is obvious, there must be a better world before evil can survive. Evil needs civilization to live off of, before it can gain real power. What Christians are required to do is to block evil from destroying civilization. To do this they need to stop all freeloading. We need to stop parasites from living off of the avails of others. But we cannot do this using the mechanisms available to us within the natural world. We cannot stop the power of gangs using the power of gangs. We cannot use the state to eliminate the state. The dynamic does not allow for this to happen. A gang that destroys other gangs by means of natural law, becomes the state, not a church. And so it is vital that we honor ownership and reject all claims on all values not created by our work. The church is an institution that rejects all rights to everything created by God. As the Bible says, this means we have to earn our bread by the sweat of our brow, but on the other hand, what we earn, belongs to us. It is the efficiency with which we make this pivot that determines how perfected we become and how civilized. Note that because the church abjures all claims to anything we did not create by our work, what we have is the equivalency of church and the free market. The church as the state is not more compatible than the church and the free market, and for the same reason. There is respect for the rights of the owner, or there is a disregard for owners' rights. If the person or the institution rejects the rights of owners, then it is evil and it resorts to the law of the jungle. In fact, it is because the person wants what others have, that he or she resorts to violence and coercion. The force is used to create liabilities, that is unwarranted claims against something rightfully owned by another. Force or the threat of violence is used against people so they will give up their rights to their property. However, the probability is, their own claim is not solid or able to be justified. The church is an alternative reality. It is built by looking for where there is parasitism and making a 180-degree turn. As said, parasitism serves as a compass needle to point out where the church is. It is always in the diametric opposite direction. But there is more. The church and state, and the two realities, are incompatible and inversely related, but they are not equal and can never be. The negative is always dependent on the positive. The negative instance always feeds off the positive and is dependent on the positive for its survival. The negative must consume resources created by the positive instance if it is to exist at all. But in turning away from this negation of the positive, the church purifies itself of this evil, becomes perfected and becomes a light to the world. The church is this other world. If you take all of the characteristics of nature and the physical world and all of the institutions and policies it produces and spin them around, one gets a good idea of what the church is and what the other reality looks like. We know that the fallen world is based on the rule of the ruthless. The powerful create a state that formalizes the exactions that permit the state to function. We are not like that. The church is a charity in that it is a not-for-profit organization. But the essential difference is our absolute and unqualified respect for the rights of owners, particularly when the owner is God. God spoke our world into existence. It is analytical, not physical, it is logical, not empirical, it is discovered through a priori reasoning and deduction. Our world is formed of reason and information. Our world is good because the logic and morality of it is sound. Good is a moral attribution, not a mechanical or physical one. Logically and morally, we have to attribute value to the proper account. Mankind cannot create information. The truth is perfect already. What we do is push our knowledge of the truth forward. We learn about God, through unveiling the truth of this world, using deductive reasoning. Everything that the natural world is, must be transformed into what the spiritual world is. The natural world is the world of the spiritually immature, the people of the flesh. But these people of the flesh grow in the flesh, but they do not mature in the spirit. Thus, they are at war with the truth. Those who do mature spiritually are at war with the flesh. But we see this as a spiritual war that only impacts our relationship with God. We fight waste and the socialist agenda on this earth as a struggle against bad practices, but ultimately all of this relates to a battle of flesh against spirit. We must strive to reduce our tolerance for waste, immorality, and everything that makes us and the world less than perfect. But how to do this if we have taken perfection off of the table? If we deny the need, let alone the possibility, of perfection, how can we win the war against the flesh? But we know already, we simply observe all that the flesh enjoys and is attracted to, and we turn and go the other way.